Most people are taught to think retirement begins when a company calendar says it begins, 65, maybe 67, maybe whenever Medicare shows up and somebody in human resources finally stops emailing you forms. I have never believed that was the real line. The real line for a great many people arrives much earlier, and it arrives quietly. It arrives the first time a man or woman in their late 50s opens a retirement statement, sees a number they spent 30 years building, and feels a strange question rise in the room. Not, do I have enough one day? Not, how much more can I stack? The real question is harsher than that. Why am I still living as if my time belongs to somebody else? That question becomes dangerous around age 59 and a half because that is when the system changes and most people do not notice. They keep obeying the old rules after the old rules have already expired. They keep trading healthy years for a paycheck they no longer fully need. They keep treating retirement accounts like sealed vaults, even after the lock has already come off the door. That is how intelligent people lose years they can never buy back. The central mistake is not a savings mistake. It is not even mainly an investment mistake. It is a control mistake. People think the game is about building the biggest pile possible. Past 59 and a half, the game starts becoming something else. It becomes a question of how intelligently you can turn assets into freedom without handing an unnecessary cut to taxes, penalties, bad timing, and fear. I want you to hear that clearly because it is the mother line for everything that follows. The issue is not whether you can stop earning a salary forever this second. The issue is whether the rules after 59 and a half allow you to stop living like a full-time employee long before most people realize they can. For a lot of families, the answer is yes. I have watched people stay trapped because they were using the wrong measuring stick. They kept comparing their future retirement income to their old gross salary, as if retirement must replace every dollar that came through payroll. That is the thinking of a worker. It is not the thinking of a capital allocator. And if you want a better life in your early 60s, that identity has to change. The first illusion I want to destroy is what I call the locked box lie before age 59 and a half. Most withdrawals from traditional retirement accounts come with an extra 10% penalty on top of the income tax. That penalty is not a theory. It is a wall. It trains people to think of their own money as untouchable. So they spend years organizing their psychology around one assumption: I cannot use this money yet. Then one birthday passes, the half birthday passes, the penalty for most normal situations disappears. Not the tax. I am not selling fairy tales. Traditional money is still taxed as ordinary income when it comes out. But the extra punishment for accessing your own savings largely vanishes, and that changes the character of the account completely. Yesterday it was a vault. Today it is a tool that is not a small legal detail, that is a change in power. Once that penalty disappears, your IRA and old 401k stop being museum pieces you admire from behind glass. They become working assets you can coordinate with the rest of your life. You can draw selectively. You can convert strategically. You can reduce future trouble. Instead of waiting for future trouble to ambush you, you can start buying back your time in measured, intelligent pieces. Most people never emotionally catch up to that rule change. They are still acting like prisoners after the gate is open. And once you miss that shift, you start making expensive decisions in the name of safety. The next mechanism is what I call the paycheck trap. A paycheck feels safe because it is familiar, but familiar is not the same thing as efficient. When you are working, your income is rigid. It arrives on schedule. It is heavily visible. It is taxed through a system built to take its share before you ever feel the money in your hands. You are not designing the flow very much. You are receiving it, retirement income. If you structure it properly, behaves very differently. It can come from different places in different amounts at different times with different tax effects. That is where many people make their biggest mental mistake. They imagine retirement as the disappearance of income, when the truth is closer to the redesign of income. Suppose a household earns $110,000 from work. They may think they need $110,000 forever to feel normal. In reality, payroll taxes change, retirement contributions stop, commuting costs shrink, work clothes fade, lunch spending drops, and the mortgage may be lighter than it was 15 years earlier. That same household might discover that the life they actually care about runs on $70,000 or $65,000 or less. Then the question changes again. If you do not need your old gross salary, why are you still chained to your old gross schedule? This is where I want you to picture three faucets over a sink. One faucet is tax-deferred money. the traditional IRA or 401k. Another is tax-free money, the Roth side. The third is taxable savings, cash, brokerage assets, dividends, maybe some bond income. A worker lives under a single pipe. A retiree with a plan can blend three. That blending power is more important than people understand. You might cover 1 year partly with cash, partly with a modest IRA withdrawal, and partly with dividends. You might take very little from the traditional bucket 1 year and more from it the next. You might realize that a spouse working part-time for $20,000 dramatically reduces the amount the portfolio must supply. You might discover that what looked impossible under salary thinking looks very manageable under distribution, thinking that is the identity flip. You are no longer mainly an employee trying to replace a paycheck. You are the chief allocator of a family balance sheet, and the moment that mental shift happens, age 59 and a half stops looking like a waiting room and starts looking like a control room. Now let me show you the tax mechanism that makes this window especially powerful, because this is where people either gain tremendous flexibility or sleepwalk into future tax pain. I call it the empty bracket window. Recent law changes moved required minimum distributions later. For many people, that forced distribution age is now 73, and for those born in 1960 or later, it is scheduled to move to 75. That means a person who reaches 59 and a half may have more than a decade, sometimes close to a decade and a half. Before the government starts forcing larger withdrawals out of traditional accounts, that stretch matters. If you stop or scale back work at 60, 61, or 62, you may create several years in which your taxable income is materially lower than it was during your highest earning career years. Those years are not dead space. They are tax design years. They are years in which you can choose to pull some money out of tax-deferred accounts on purpose while your bracket is gentler. They are years in which partial Roth conversions may make sense. They are years in which you can reduce the size of the future snowball before it starts rolling downhill into your 70s. Let me make that concrete. Imagine a couple in their early 60s with $1.6 million, of which $1 million sits in traditional accounts. They keep working until 66 because it feels prudent. Their wages stay high, their tax bracket stays elevated, they do almost no Roth conversion work, their traditional accounts keep growing, then Social Security begins, then RMDs begin later. Now, forced withdrawals stack on top of Social Security, investment income, and maybe pension income. The tax bill is fatter, the Medicare premiums may rise because of income-related surcharges. Flexibility shrinks right when simplicity matters most. The same couple, if they leave full-time work earlier and use the low-income years intelligently, might convert $40,000 or $60,000 a year for several years at tax rates they can tolerate. They may intentionally withdraw some traditional money before the forced distribution era. They may arrive at age 73 or 75 with a smaller traditional balance, a larger Roth balance, and a future tax picture that is calmer, cleaner, and less vulnerable to ugly surprises. People see the smaller paycheck and panic. They do not see the smaller future tax bomb. That blind spot is costly. If a future RMD pushes you into a higher bracket or raises your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums through IRMAA, or causes more of your retirement income to be taxed at unattractive rates, that is not bad luck. Very often it is deferred planning. It is the price of never using the empty bracket window while it was available. I have no interest in overcomplicating life, but I also have no interest in pretending that working longer is automatically safer. Sometimes working longer is just procrastination wearing a responsible costume. That brings me to the next mechanism. And this one never shows up clearly on a spreadsheet. I call it the healthy year premium. The market will let you compound money. It will not let you compound your early 60s. You can make more dollars later. You cannot recreate the exact version of your body. Energy, curiosity, mobility, and freedom you have right now. A lot of people make retirement decisions as if all years are interchangeable. They are not. A year at 61 is not the same asset as a year at 74. Anyone who has lived long enough knows this in their bones, even if they refuse to say it out loud. I have seen people save heroically, invest intelligently, avoid lifestyle stupidity, and still make one tragic mistake. They use their best remaining physical years to defend against a financial scenario that was no longer the most likely scenario. They keep going because more feels safer, more salary, more years, more cushion, more delay. But safety is not a one-dimensional word. Safety in old age is not only about account balances, it is also about when you get to live. A family that retires with $100,000 less but gains 4 vigorous years together may be wealthier in the only currency that counts. A man who waits until his knees fail to take the trips he talked about for 10 years did not win some great prudence award. He made a bad exchange and only understood the price after he paid it. This is the cruel thing about overworking your late 50s and early 60s. The bill does not arrive in dollars. First, it arrives in missed seasons. That is why I tell people the real question is not merely, can I earn more if I keep working? Of course you can. The question is, what am I sacrificing in tax flexibility, family time, health, and psychological life by acting as if one more year is always free? One more year is never free. Now, before fear starts making its usual speeches, we have to deal with the 2 objections that keep sensible people frozen. The first is health insurance. The second is the word enough. Health insurance is the objection people say out loud because it sounds rational. And to be fair, it is rational. Leaving employer coverage before age 65 is a real planning issue, but it is usually not a reason to stop thinking. It is a reason to stop guessing. Many people in their early 60s look at marketplace premiums and feel immediate panic. They see big numbers. In some cases, a couple can absolutely face premiums around $2,000 a month before subsidies, depending on age plan level and location. That number is not imaginary, but neither are the adjustments that occur when taxable income drops. If you leave full-time work and carefully manage reported income, subsidies may materially reduce the real out-of-pocket cost. The same income planning that creates room for thoughtful Roth conversions can also change the economics of pre-Medicare insurance. In other words, health insurance is not just a cost problem, it is an income architecture problem, and when people finally model it rather than fear it, they often discover it is burdensome. Yes, but not fatal. Then comes Medicare at 65, which many workers mistakenly treat like the end of healthcare anxiety. It is not. It is a different chapter, not a magical eraser. A typical retiring couple may still need hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of retirement for premiums, out-of-pocket spending, dental, vision. And the rest of the medical reality people prefer not to quantify. So I do not want you swapping one fantasy for another. I want you facing the numbers with maturity, but notice what that means. If healthcare costs exist either way, then the issue is not whether healthcare is expensive. The issue is whether your retirement timing and tax design make the expense more manageable. That is a planning problem. Planning problems can be improved. The harder objection is enough, because enough is where fear starts wearing the mask of virtue. People ask for a magic number because magic numbers feel cleaner than honest thinking. 1 million, 2 million, 25 times expenses, 4% safe withdrawal rate. These ideas are not useless, but they become dangerous when people treat them like commandments instead of tools. Enough is not an account size, enough is a system. A household with $1.4 million, low debt, clear spending, sensible withdrawal sequencing, and coordinated Social Security decisions can be far more secure than a household with $3 million and no blueprint. Except vague optimism, confidence does not come from the balance alone. It comes from seeing how the machine works. That is why I care so much about spending truth. Most people do not know what their life actually costs. They know what money flows through their accounts. That is not the same thing. They know what they spend during busy working years, with stress purchases, convenience spending, random subscriptions, workplace habits, and family routines built around employment. That is not the same thing as knowing the cost of the life they want next. You cannot identify enough until you identify the life. And once people do that honestly, something remarkable happens. Fear stops sounding intelligent and starts sounding repetitive. This is usually the moment when the family identity changes for good. They stop seeing themselves as workers with a retirement problem. They start seeing themselves as owners with a design problem. That design problem can be solved. Now, I want to give you the blueprint I trust most, because many people do not need more inspiration. They need a protocol. I call it the freedom operating system. It does not begin with the market. It begins with arithmetic. You start by finding the real annual spending number, not your guess, not the number you tell yourself over dinner. The real number. Go through bank statements, credit card statements, mortgage, insurance, groceries, travel, gifts, repairs, all of it. Then separate what is essential from what is lifestyle, and separate what is recurring from what is episodic. The point is not austerity. The point is accuracy. A retirement plan built on a false spending number is a house framed with warped lumber. Once the spending truth is on the table, the next layer is account mapping. I want people to see money in time horizons, Not just account names, you need near-term liquidity. For the next 1 to 3 years, you need steadier money for the middle years. You need growth money for the decade beyond that. This is where many families suddenly realize they are wealthier than they feel, because the same assets that once looked like a confusing pile begin to reveal a structure. Cash is not the same job as bonds. Bonds are not the same job as equities. A Roth account is not the same job as a traditional IRA. Clarity itself lowers fear. After that, you use the age 59.5 to RMD window as a deliberate tax corridor. This is not a casual concept. This is where large lifetime differences can be created by small annual decisions. If a family drops from a full salary to part-time income plus modest portfolio support, they may have room to convert traditional money to Roth without jumping into punitive tax territory. Maybe it is $20,000 a year, maybe $50,000, maybe more. The right number depends on the full picture. But the principle is stable. Every intentional move made in a lower tax year can shrink future forced income in a higher friction year. Then I want a work redesign decision, not just a retirement date. People make themselves stupid when they think only in absolutes, full-time or nothing, grind or vanish. In reality, the gap between what your old employer paid and what your next life actually costs is often smaller than your fear claims. A spouse may still work. Consulting might bring in $15,000 or $25,000. A lower stress role may cover health care for a season. Some people do not need to retire from productivity. They need to retire from full-time extraction. That is a very different sentence, and for many people it is the sentence that unlocks the door. Next comes debt triage. I do not want expensive consumer debt following you into a stage of life that demands flexibility. High-interest debt is a tyrant. Kill it. Mortgage decisions are more personal and less absolute. But credit card debt, personal loans, sloppy obligations, these things destroy optionality. Sometimes, after age 59.5, a carefully planned distribution to eliminate ugly debt can improve the whole system, even after taxes, because it lowers the permanent drag on the household that should be modeled, not assumed, but it should absolutely be on the table. Then you coordinate guaranteed income with intelligence. Social Security is not just a government check. It is a timing decision. Claiming at 62 is one number. Claiming at full retirement age is another. Delaying further can raise the monthly benefit materially. Those differences matter. Spousal dynamics matter. Pension choices matter if pensions exist. I have seen families gain or lose 6 figures over a retirement simply because nobody forced all the claiming decisions to sit in the same room with the tax decisions. Separate those decisions and the system leaks money. Coordinate them and the system starts working like a business instead of a pile of paperwork. And then comes the part people neglect because it feels soft. Even though it is one of the hardest financial questions there is, what exactly is the life this money is supposed to buy? If you do not answer that, you will keep defaulting to work because work comes with a ready-made schedule, identity, hierarchy, and reward loop. Many people are not afraid of retirement math. They are afraid of retirement emptiness. So they keep hiding inside work and pretending it is prudence. It is not prudence. It is unexamined dependence. I want the next chapter drawn with specifics. Where will you live? What will your weeks contain? Which relationships become central again? What travel still matters while your body cooperates? What projects would make you feel useful? What form of contribution gives you dignity without owning all your hours? Without those answers, money feels abstract and leaving work feels like a cliff. With those answers, money becomes a bridge. That is the operating system, not a number, a system, not fantasy, a protocol. And when people finally see the protocol, the emotional temperature changes. They stop asking, can I afford to never make money again? They start asking, why am I donating my healthiest years to a routine I have not re-evaluated in light of the tools now available to me? Let me tell you what this looks like in real life, because examples often reach where theory cannot. I think about a couple in roughly this season of life. He is 60, she is 58. They have done many things right, retirement accounts built patiently. Mortgage mostly under control, children launched, no private jet nonsense, no lottery, ticket fantasies, just decades of sensible behavior, and one recurring sentence from the husband every winter. One more year and I will feel safer. That sentence sounded wise. It also happened to be the sentence keeping him stuck. When they finally put the whole plan on paper, the illusion broke. Their annual spending was lower than he feared. A part-time income stream could cover more than they expected. Their taxable income picture after leaving full-time work was dramatically different from their working income picture. A modest sequence of withdrawals plus selective Roth conversions created a cleaner long-term trajectory than simply staying fully employed. Marketplace insurance was not pleasant, but it was manageable inside the design. Most importantly, the amount of portfolio income actually needed to support the life they wanted was nowhere near his old salary. That realization did not just change a spreadsheet, it changed his identity. He had spent years believing that stepping away from full-time work meant stepping into danger. In reality, full-time work had become the thing preventing him from using his lowest tax years, restructuring the future, and enjoying a body that still wanted to move. He was not protecting himself anymore. He was delaying himself. This happens constantly. Good savers underestimate how powerful coordination is. Bad planners overestimate how much brute force labor is still required, and fear loves that confusion because fear always makes itself sound practical. I want you to understand one more thing. Retirement income in your early 60s is not supposed to look like your employment income in your peak working years. That comparison alone has trapped millions of people. Your job is not to copy your old financial life line for line. Your job is to support the life that now matters, with the least friction, the most flexibility, and the highest respect for time. That may mean working less, not working. That may mean consulting 1 year, then stopping. That may mean one spouse continues while the other exits. That may mean using cash first, then tax, deferred money, then Roth conversions, then Social Security later. That may mean no dramatic retirement speech at all, just a quiet refusal to keep selling 5 days a week because you finally understand what your capital can do. But whatever form it takes, the threshold is the same. You must stop evaluating the next chapter with worker logic after worker logic has ceased to be the only logic available. This is where many people miss the deeper lesson behind age 59 and a half. The real gift is not merely penalty, free access. The real gift is decision power over timing, decision power over taxes, decision power over withdrawals, decision power over how much labor remains necessary, decision power over whether the second half of your life will be governed by fear, habit, or design. And if you never exercise that decision power, then the law changed, but your life did not. That would be a terrible waste. I also want to be candid about something the financial world often handles poorly. A lot of retirement advice is really obedience advice. Work longer, delay everything, assume the worst, die with extra. Call that prudence. There is a place for caution. I have made a career out of respecting downside. But downside is not only market loss, downside is also misusing life because a spreadsheet was never connected to reality. Taxes, health, or the psychology of time. The best plans are not the plans that maximize the ending account balance at 92. The best plans are the plans that intelligently fund a life you are still physically able to enjoy, while keeping the future robust enough that you are not one bad year away from panic. That is the balance point. That is what the mediocre advice misses. And that is why 59 and a half deserves far more respect than most people give it. By then, the person who has saved seriously is no longer dealing with a simple accumulation problem. They are dealing with a sequencing, withdrawal, tax, and life design problem. Solve that problem well. And what looked like a scary transition becomes a controlled conversion from labor dependence to strategic freedom. So tonight I want you to ask a much better question than the one fear has been feeding you. Do not ask, should I keep working until the age everybody else repeats? Ask this instead. If I stopped full-time work at 59 and a half, 60, or 62, how much income would I actually need from my assets after accounting for lower work costs, smarter taxes, possible part-time income, healthcare design, and the life I genuinely want to live? That question is harder. It is also the question that tells the truth. Because if the answer is far lower than your old salary, and if the tax window in front of you is more powerful than you realized, and if the years you are protecting are no longer your strongest years anyway, then what exactly are you waiting for? A rounder number on a statement, permission from people who do not have to live your life. Another year to feel safe, followed by another, followed by another. I have watched that movie. It does not end the way people imagine. At some point, the issue is no longer whether you can afford freedom. It is whether you have the nerve to recognize that freedom may already be more affordable than your fear wants to admit. There is a final choice hidden inside this whole conversation, and it has very little to do with finance on the surface. You can keep using work as an emotional insurance policy long after it stops being the most rational economic policy. Or you can sign a new contract with yourself, a contract that says this: I will no longer demand that every year of my remaining healthy life be justified by the old rules. I will measure carefully, I will plan seriously, I will respect taxes, health care, and uncertainty. But once the math and the structure tell me I have options, I will not keep pretending I do not. That is the threshold. Cross it. And your money starts serving your life, refuse it. And your life keeps serving your fear. And if you understand what really happens at 59 and a half, you may discover that the greatest risk in front of you is not retiring too early. It is realizing too late that you are already free enough to begin.